What's up guys, Enkiri here. Today I want to talk about a comment that I made in one of my recent videos that I guess a few people found amusing, or they thought I was joking when I said it, or they simply thought that the logic that led me there makes me a stupid person. But before we jump to judgment, allow me to explain myself. And I think that many of you will agree with the premise that I lay out here today. So anyway, in my original athlean-x critique video, I mentioned towards the end of the video that strength training and the act of continually coaxing progression through the different stages of a trainee's career will always be more of an art than a science. Now, I'm not about to sift through the comments on that shit show of a video to find the responses of people who disagreed with me. Otherwise, I would be happy to refute those comments directly, as you guys know. However, rather than sifting through the garbage, I've instead made my own reenactment of the typical commenter on that video. And I'll just flash that up here real quick for you guys to see. So I would say this little paraphrase job here is a pretty on-point characterization of the typical response to my assertion there. And respectfully, I have to disagree with these people. The thing is, you can dress it up all you want. You can account for all the known variables in existence. You can plan macrocycles and mesocycles and microcycles down to the finest fucking details and implement the perfect, most scientifically validated progression plan and set and rep schemes in conjunction with what EMG studies tell us are the most highly effective exercises laid out in the most precise and effective order to hit all the functions of all the muscles in the exact fashion that research shows they should be hit. But guess what? No matter how perfect your plan is, no matter how many details you've outlined into it, no matter how many variables you've accounted for, eventually progress is going to stop. And that is the only scientific concept you can fucking count on. Death, taxes, and stagnation in the gym. Those are the only guarantees in life. Physiology makes you no promises other than eventually adaptation will have occurred. And that will be the end of the story. Now, the degree of adaptation is going to be dependent on the individual and stress levels and sleep volume and quality and how good or bad their diet is. And yes, even how intelligently laid out their original training plan was, as well as a million other factors that no one can even objectively define. So let me ask you a question. What happens then? When progress hits the impenetrable wall, what do? Do we pound our heads into it and wonder how science can possibly be failing us? Do we shift the blame onto ourselves? Since science is infallible and all, then a science-based plan that results in stagnation and lack of progress must be due to user error, right? Or do we go back to the drawing board and pick back up from square one with the next best perfect science-based training routine? The answer is none of the above. A smart and experienced trainee will do none of these things because a smart and experienced trainee has learned through trial and error and experience, through repeatedly failing and occasionally succeeding, that minor tweaks to the program here and there make all the difference in the world. Changing up a particular set and rep scheme, or perhaps swapping out just one or maybe two exercises, or increasing the load somewhere, or decreasing the load somewhere, or increasing the recovery time somewhere, or decreasing the recovery time somewhere, or increasing the volume somewhere, or decreasing the volume somewhere. I think you get the point. Never very drastically and never all at once, but just minor tweaks here and there based on feel that has been acquired through experience, not scientific data. These sorts of minor alterations allow you to continually coax progress along, to finesse the program goddamn near indefinitely if you play your cards right. I mean, technically, I've been doing the same damn program for like the last 2 years. At this point, it's the proverbial ship that has had all the original planks replaced, but it took a long time for that to happen, and it was a very gradual process. So as far as I'm concerned, it's still the same ship. But the crux of the thing is, these alterations aren't based on anything scientific, because how could they be? There's no peer-reviewed research on this stuff because there are too many unknowns at play, too many factors that simply cannot be quantified or assigned some specific or objective value to create a reliable, working, and repeatable formula for when to take any particular action. And ultimately, they're all going to be based on the individual that you're working with anyway. Even individual temperaments are going to play a role, not just physical genetics and modifiable lifestyle factors like sleep and diet, but personalities and psychological aspects are huge as well. So a good coach uses a blend of scientific theories, and remember, that's all they are, is theories, as well as his personal experience as a backbone in order to create a rough training plan. And then from there, he watches how an individual responds to that plan. The specific exercises, the assigned volumes and intensities, the total tonnages, etc., etc. And he modifies things accordingly from there. Much like an artist begins a painting with a certain framework in mind, but after so many strokes of the brush have been applied to the canvas, each and every painting is going to take on a life of its own, and each and every one needs to be looked at as an individual entity. No two finished pieces, even ones painted by the same artist, are going to be identical. Maybe the lighting in the room was slightly different, or the paint mixed a little bit differently, or the curve of the canvas was just a little bit altered. Regardless of the reasons, the artist has to modify his original plan just enough and call the correct audibles along the way in order to create the proper, beautiful, and unique finished product. And it's the same with people and strength training. No one can account for all the variables ahead of time. No one can predict the future, and no one can create an absolutely objective and perfectly repeatable method of training that works for everybody all the time, because it isn't a fucking science. Even if you look at something like the Bulgarian system, which Abadjiev reformed many times over the years to create something as regimented and damn near as scientific as he possibly could. Now, if we ignore the fact that the training sessions themselves were auto-regulated and just analyze the general parameters of the program itself, then we begin to see the problem with trying to turn strength training into something that's overly scientific. Because the Bulgarian method, while in terms of results, it was arguably the most effective method of training for Olympic weightlifting of its era, and maybe even of all time, doesn't conform to individuals. Individuals conform to it, and if they don't, then they break. The original plan, as coached by Abadjiev, was regimented to a T. And that's fine when gold medals are at stake and you have an entire country's population to use as guinea pigs for your experiment. A few of those little guys are undoubtedly going to survive and they're going to thrive. But in doing so, you're merely creating a model that works for a certain type of person. Now, it works fucking amazingly for that specific type of person, but it can't be extrapolated beyond that to any other people because it isn't malleable. And people, being the unique individuals that they all are, require malleability, which isn't exactly the hallmark defining feature of scientific study. A little wiggle room here and there doesn't really fit within the ideology. It'd be like if you acknowledge that 1 + 1 = 2, but sometimes it kind of needs to equal 3 instead based on the circumstances. People love to make fun of bro science and the dudes who supposedly adhere to it. But if you pay attention, you realize that ultimately what that gym lore ideology really boils down to is we're all different. So experiment a little bit and then do what works for you. And anecdotally, in my experience, those guys tend to be pretty jacked and pretty strong. Whereas the guys who are overly focused on what the data says just look like fucking nerds to me. Maybe that's because exercise science can only seem to tell us pointless shit like, in this one single instance, 3 sets of 12 on the leg extension machine done at 60% of 1 rep max produced a 15% increase in knee extension torque over a 12-week period in untrained individuals. Cool. Here, I'll coin a new strength training term for you guys right now, and remember you heard it here first. We'll call it structured malleability. You begin with a framework and you work within that framework, but you allow it to be altered in small doses as needed to accommodate the individual that's currently working within it. That's how you maximize progress in the long run. You do have to have a plan, and that plan can be based on whatever scientific theories and data you want it to be based on. But along the way, you also have to figure out how to change it and when to change it. And science can't answer those questions for you because there's a million variables at play here, and half of them currently are and probably always will be unknown. And that is why strength training is an art and not a science. Anyway, that's all I got for now, guys. Please be sure to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And definitely leave me some love in the comments down below. Keep training hard, and I will catch you guys next time.